Happy New Year and welcome back to the InCyber podcast. We hope you all had a fantastic and restful festive season. As a way to kick off 2025, we'll be unpacking why the human factor remains one of the most crucial parts of cybersecurity. In a world that's racing towards AI-driven solutions, attackers are also using the same advanced technology to exploit vulnerabilities found not only in machines, but in people as well. I'm your host, Anita, joined by Callum and Warren. Welcome back. So jumping straight into things, why do we say that the human factor is one of the crucial parts in cybersecurity?
We were very connected human race at the moment. With 8 billion people on Earth, we've been given the technology to connect. And 150 years ago, it wasn't the same. You had to, deliver posts to people, find a way to scam someone in the sort of physical sense. Now we've got cybersecurity. We are still human. We are still creating tools that are made by us, and they're only as good as humans can make them. So we need to make sure that when we are talking about the human element of cybersecurity, there is not just the focus on the tools that we're using, but the people that are behind them.
100%. And I would say we've been developing this system for quite a while now. So when it comes to actual technical solutions in terms of battling the security problems we face, we have the solutions. But at the end of the day, you can have a secure application, but it still interacts with a human. And humans are unfortunately the weakest link when it comes to the battle of cybersecurity. So it's a focal point actually in this efforts, because we are trying to protect people at the end of the day, and they're unfortunately the weakest link.
And the more in touch that we are with the younger generations that are coming into the world that have that don't know anything but being connected all the time. If we are upskilling them with the awareness and the training to make sure that they know what they're handling, then we are successful in our message that's getting out there to uplift others, rather than just trying to gatekeep and hide information so that we can improve ourselves, but not the population around us.
And the future generations.
Exactly, yeah.
I actually read something, and it's something we all believe in as cybersecurity professionals, where we say cybersecurity is only as strong, as its weakest links. And oftentimes attackers do target humans because it's easier to manipulate, someone's emotions or their behaviors compared to trying to breach a hardened system, So
Exactly.
I agree with you both. And on that topic of the weakest link, on that note of humans being the weakest link, there's obviously many factors that could lead to us saying that humans are the weakest link, such as psychological factors, organizational
100%.
factors, environmental factors as well, just to mention a few. So starting off with psychological factors, which mainly involves, trust and empathy. As humans, we are wired to naturally trust and empathize with each other. So in terms of psychological factors, let's unpack that. What does that actually mean? What do you guys think about that?
That is basically human hacking, because hacking in essence is breaking something apart, seeing how its internals work, and then manipulating that for your goals and whatnot. So when it comes to psychology, we all inherently have it. We work a certain way. We respond to certain things a certain way. So the hackers understand those types of things. They understand that we feel sorry generally. So when you see a message asking you to take some sort of action in someone else's distress, for example, we feel the empathy to want to help. So that is being exploited into being taken advantage of, because we designed like that. So it's an interesting phenomenon, to be honest.
And we as humans, we want to help everyone. We want people to flourish, and everyone wants to go in the forwards direction. There will be people who are going to do the opposite of that, and those sort of people will take advantage of the fact that we are vulnerable. We're able to empathize. And as an example, your grandmother who is she's having to make a transaction here, and she needs to get money to this guy because shame he's not able to afford anything, but she's worked so hard and she's got this money that she's earned, but now shame this poor guy who needs help and needs money to get off his feet. And to get on his feet and get back into the real world. He can't do that because he needs money. She's going to feel bad and just send him money so that he can better himself, and that's the manipulation that these attackers use to gain advantage.
Yeah. And to add on to that, as humans, we naturally have a fight or flight response. When we're under stress or when we fear something, we tend to act impulsively without considering, the security protocols involved. We just react, So to all your points, as I guess what we're trying to say is from a psychological point of view, instead of just acting, take a step back first and think about security consequences, security protocols before you react to a particular situation.
Especially when it comes to trust, because you trust your bank. So you by virtue of that, you trust any sort of message they sent you. And attackers exploit that. They know you trust your bank. They know you trust when your bank phones, emails, ask for anything. So they will pretend to be your bank and basically hack your trust.
Yeah.
And the big thing about banks that you bring up is that back in the 1950s and 1960s, my grandfather told me about all these stories that as a professional, you are now earning money. Now you go to the bank and you're a human being speaking to a human being behind the desk, and that relationship that you build with that person determines what you're going to get from the company. Nowadays, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you have. It is purely a monetary value of how much can you bring us and how much can we make off you being a client of ours. There's no relationship there. There is a little bit of one that you can help to find the right people, but still there is almost a zero trust element to it, where they do not trust anyone because hackers are trying to take advantage of that possibility.
You're saying don't trust automation.
Exactly.
Exactly.
100%.
And then looking at the other factors, such as organizational factors, let's unpack that a bit. As an auditor, in my day-to-day when I'm auditing a client, we oftentimes like to emphasize that, cybersecurity is not just a tick box exercise, but rather we look at the entire security culture in an organization. So what do you guys think about, the organization and the organizational factor contributing to humans being the weakest link?
It's a big contribution because culture is everything. If your organization's attitude towards the security chief, for example, is those guys that are going to bother us or try to trick us with their phishing payloads and whatnot, that's the wrong culture to have, because you will sit next to someone who writes their passwords on a sticky note and leaves it unattended, goes to the cafeteria, goes to the toilet and just leave their machine open. If you don't say anything to them, the culture's broken in essence, because we have to take accountability for everyone. It's a team sport. At the end of the day, we're trying to protect the organization, because if the organization thrives, we thrive, the organization's clients thrive. So yeah.
And the on top of that, the challenges faced with having to bring, whenever you invest money into something, to bring value, and how is this going to bring value to my company? I'm now going, and I think we have spoken about this before in previous episodes, where you are now investing, say, 50,000 Rand into something. If this is a product that I'm buying, this is going to bring me 150,000 Rand a month of income. Of course, I'm going to jump in and do it because it's going to give me something out of it. If I'm investing 50,000 Rand a month into security and there's no actual monetary value coming back for it, why am I actually doing this in the first place? But it's to prepare you for those things that may happen. When you're losing 1.5 million Rand, you go, okay, this is actually the reason that we have this in place. So having that buy-in from an organization is very difficult.
Sorry, and once the top level, the board, the CEO, the C-suite, once they have a good culture amongst themselves, it's easy for it to transpire throughout the organization. So it starts at the top, essentially.
That's true. I was going to add on, to your point, to both of your points. Top level, let's say they have established policies and procedures in place. What's the point of having that if you're actually not encouraging people to abide by them, to read them and train people on it? Because an employee might just they might not feel empowered to report something suspicious when they see it, because to your point, they might feel like, oh, that's IT team's job, not really us. But if you have an organization that's security focused, not just for when they want to get certified or when there's a breach, but it's part of their day-to-day, it makes employees feel comfortable enough to ask those questions and, raise any suspicious activities that they find.
100%.
Yeah.
Sorry, Callum,
No
because
worries.
you have your manager who doesn't lock his laptop when he walks away
Exactly.
from it. You're gonna look at him and be like, why must I do it? He doesn't do
Exactly.
it. So
It's very important to have that culture because, I mean, someone who is very trusting and hasn't had anything happen to them yet is going to be very relaxed about any situation that they're in. They're going to trust you. They're going to believe you. They're going to understand that, oh, there's a chance that he's actually being legit. And those are the people that you need to watch out for the most, because those are the people who will be targeted and will have, when they are least expecting it, they're going to get hacked. It's almost a guarantee. And there are multiple stories that I have from family and friends of people just, they're not conscious of the idea of security, and it isn't even introduced in a company. And as we've seen, even at university, security is not a thing. Security isn't a problem. I mean, some there have been buildings that I've walked into that I'm not a student there. Suddenly, I'm in the building, and am I actually supposed to be here? It's a level of trust that the students on the campus may have. But actually, should they even have that trust in the first place when there are people taking advantage, like those extreme cases you see overseas?
Exactly.
So,
and it shouldn't be limited to only the IT team, but it should be communicated that every single person, including students, in that case, actually plays a role in keeping the entire institution safe. So then jumping into the environmental factors, burnout, this is something as cybersecurity professionals we've all experienced. And from your point of view, how would you say burnout also, or any other environmental factor in that case, also contributes to humans being one of the weakest links?
So I'll use an example, like what I do, security operations, we deal with alerts that come in. So we have to do investigations. We make critical decisions in terms of whether we take a threat seriously or not. So if I'm tired, I'm exhausted, fatigued, a ticket comes in just as I'm about to clock out, and I just tell myself, you know what, I'm not even going to do the necessary checks. I'm not going to double check, make sure that, it's actually a false positive. And I just close it as a false positive. The company could get breached. Yeah. So it's quite important that I have regular breaks, sort of like calm myself down when I'm approaching a ticket, just to make sure I'm level-headed when I'm doing my work. So environmental factors play a big role.
And you have someone to, if you aren't, able to, you can hand it to someone else to maintain it for you at the same time.
Exactly. That's why the way MSSPs, managed security services providers, people who do your 24/7 monitoring, they work in shifts, exactly, because you can't have someone constantly doing the same thing. They're going to get fatigued. So they shift it out. They rotate, and it's coordinated properly. But yeah, you can get burnt out and make decisions that cost companies a lot of money.
I mean, I've seen it in auditing as well. When you audit, it can be quite a tedious job. It's very repetitive, but you also at the same time have to be very detail orientated and look for specific things. And even when I'm doing an audit, it's better having a second auditor with me so that I don't overlook certain details because I'm tired. Because I mean, some audit sessions could be like 2 hours long, and speaking for 2 hours, you get tired. So it's always best to have a second person in the background, just watching out for those small little things that I maybe overlooked because I'm tired or I'm just like not in the mood or whatever the case may be.
And the people that you have the conversation with, and we go back to the organizational, effect as well, is that if the people that you have a conversation with are fun, if they're going through it and they've got the buy and they know this is what we're going to do and it's going to be fun, we're going to achieve it, we're going to be secure, then it's not as difficult for you as someone who they really could not care. They don't want to be there, and they're being forced there to be there by their manager. It's really like, that's why kind of they play into each other, because the environment that you're going into, and it's the same with implementations. When we are implementing things for people, I've had the most fun, and I'm looking forward to a client versus I have to get into a meeting now. I'm tired. It's 4:00. I've had meetings after 5 with some clients because I don't mind it, because they've got that buy-in and they're excited to. But those meetings wouldn't probably happen if I wasn't as keen to chat to a client or.
Exactly.
You have to love what you do. Otherwise,
Exactly.
you
won't do it properly.
Yeah.
And security is a job where you always have to be 100% sharp. all the time. Like you can't slip up
And
because
attack can happen at any
exactly
point, yeah.
a slip up costs money. That's so
Exactly.
unfortunate. It's like being a doctor. Slip up costs someone their life.
Exactly. I mean, this also applies to doctors. Yeah, true.
What's so important with the phishing campaigns is they are constantly looking for that one time that you are not busy, or they know at like 6 p.m. you clock off, so at 6:01 they'll do something. They're waiting for those moments. So the more there is always someone on the clock, the better, because then someone will always be aware. So
that's why mindful practices are so important, just being present in the moment. Like when you're going through an email, just have that extra intention to be aware and mindful of what you're clicking, what you're reading, what you're expecting, what they're asking you to do. Just having that extra awareness. It's definitely needed, because your environment does determine how you act, and how you react. So yeah.
And dig into it. Don't just go and like if you see some like a QR code and you see it, it should be fine, just scan it. Actually, like, understand what you're doing, what you're scanning, what link you're clicking on, you're not just doing this just because someone's telling you to. Understand why. Like, what is the reason? Like, is this a legit email? Is this it makes sense.
And of course, I mean, as we're discussing now, we see there is major consequences from humans being tired or being burnt out, or just not being in the correct security culture. I mean, in the correct organization where they have a proper security culture. And some of the attacks that involves the human element, social engineering being one of them. Of course, social engineering is broad. For those that don't know, social engineering is when an attacker, let's say, manipulates the human behavior or the emotional state to gain unauthorized access to whatever system. So with social engineering, again, this could be a result of you being tired. Like you said, Callum, an attacker can monitor you at like after hours, the minute you clock off, or the minute you're like, okay, I'm done with this. And then that's when they come in and manipulate your current state, your psychological, that psychological state, to try and do something malicious. And with social engineering attacks, there's many, it could be broken down into many different things. Do you guys want to just expand on what are some examples of social engineering attacks? Were you susceptible to any of them?
Like you said, social engineering is a class of attacks that mainly target psychology. So like I mentioned earlier about hacking the human brain, that's exactly what they are. Various types, your phishing, so that's your email impersonation. Someone sends you an email trying to be someone else. They say, scan this or click this link or take some action that you hadn't planned to do when you woke up. You also get phishing. So this is when they phone you pretending to be someone else. They could phone pretending to be the fraud department at your bank, and then they ask you X, Y, and Z questions that may lead them to compromise your account. You also get phishing. So we love QR codes. They look cool. They're simple. Take out your phone, point it at, get to the link. So that's also being exploited. Attackers have realized that they can trick people into scanning those links, and then once they click on the link, some bad malicious action happens in the background. So you might download malware, or you might be led to a fake website pretending to be your bank's login site, and then you put your username, password, and then
those are
steal your
so
credentials.
Real. They look exactly the same.
Exactly. 100%. That's that. Now, in terms of like phishing and stuff, they're moving in that direction of spoofing websites, because people trust websites more than they trust like downloading stuff. So they're focusing on the websites that your banks, your schools, your work, and and they definitely use psychology to get to you because you're tired. You don't read properly. You too trusting. So exactly. That's what social engineering is about, exploiting those weaknesses in people.
And ways you want to mitigate that is, as we've said earlier, is you want to make sure that you're understanding what you're doing with the information that you've been given. You want to make sure that you're not just clicking the link, regardless of what the email says. You're checking who sent it. You're looking at, what part of the email looks a bit suspicious or fake, reporting things as phishing, just to make sure that you're not getting those kind of mails, and it allows the applications that you're using to pick up on the ones that you have found are phishing, so that you aren't getting as many of those emails, decreasing the amount of risk that you may have.
And anyone can be a victim of social engineering attack. It's not just limited to cybersecurity professionals. My mom could get a phishing email, literally anyone. So don't think that this is just limited to people in the industry. Attackers don't only, aim or target people in the industry. I mean, if anything, if I was an attacker, I would probably not target a cybersecurity
No.
professional because, they understand how to go about protecting themselves. But anybody can be a victim to this. It is important to understand how it works.
Embarrassingly enough, a family member of mine in about a year ago got hacked. And it was because of a very simple thing. And to further explain phishing, so you can understand it a better kind of view, it's throwing rods and throwing areas where you wouldn't quite expect someone to get caught. And the person in question, they do understand, hackers, and they do get that kind of mentality, but a friend of theirs had clicked on one of those parcel things. You're being expected to deliver a package, or a package is coming in.
I think that's a very common one. Yeah.
Exactly, which a load of people get. And following the link and those guides, they were able to get into the said person's WhatsApp account. Now, that friend of a family member of mine was then contacted, and that family member was about to go into a board meeting. Now, if someone that you trust, and because you have a lot of trust with someone who they would never send you anything bad or malicious. Now they send you something, and you now urgently give them a code or something because they need it. You know it's important. It has to have some importance. So they had caught this family member at the perfect time before them going into a board meeting that they had to turn their phone off and had to get rid of everything else because it was important. They sent the code off, put their phone away, gone. Came back a few hours later, found out that they were hacked, and that person who was now in his WhatsApp account was sending off mail or messages to loads and loads of people in his contact list. So a good thing to avoid that is to make sure that you have like two-factor authentication on. You're making sure that that's in place. You're making sure that you're not, sending out your codes to people that are, your friends. That's just, it's odd. And you're making sure that you yourself are not clicking on those tracking links or making sure that they are legit rather than not.
You said embarrassingly enough, and I just thought to myself, that's what the attackers leave us feeling like. You feel embarrassed because you're hacked, or someone was hacked. You could have told them better, they could have acted better, but the reality of it is cybersecurity experts themselves get hacked. It can happen to anyone at any time, and I don't think we should promote feeling embarrassed because that will then make the people shy away from discussing it and opening up about experiences, because in an organization you might get phished, but then you just don't tell anyone and no one knows, and now the attackers have your details. They compromise you, they get in just because you didn't feel safe to speak up or you felt embarrassed to speak up. So that's definitely a big thing for people to realize as well.
And that ties into security culture, like making it okay
to make mistakes.
Speak about these things.
Sorry, I just wanted to mention something. And you kind of touched on it, both of you guys. Earlier on, we were saying phishing mostly happens in emails, but that's not the case. It happens Telegram, WhatsApp, SMS, emails, anywhere where you can receive any sort of message can be exploited for phishing purposes. Even inside a Minecraft server, literally, you can be sent links and stuff to malicious sites. It's actually happening a lot with kids, like where they in these servers, and then they get bad people who say, here's this link to like a Roblox site or something, and then they
Steam as well,
stuff, and exactly, Steam coins and all of that. So it can happen virtually anywhere where you can send text and someone else receives it.
And that brings us to, the key role that awareness and training plays in trying to prevent these sort of things, because we can only control a human's behavior to a certain extent, and everyone is different. We all react differently. To share something, with my mother, she knows nothing really, not nothing. I'm trying to educate her on cybersecurity, but she doesn't really come from a tech background, but I do try to educate and make her aware of these sort of things. And now every single time she gets an SMS with a link, she runs to me, and she'll be like, what is this? Am I hacked? And that's the sort of thing you want to promote, because it's now drilled in her head that if I get a link from a weird number, I'm going to Anita and I'm going to verify and ask her to maybe verify this. So why is awareness and training such a critical aspect to trying to avoid these sort of attacks?
Like you said, from a technical perspective, we can only do so much. We do, at the end of the day, need to educate users on what types of attacks there are, what are the current attack methods commonly seen amongst organizations, amongst normal people, ways to mitigate that. So we equip the users with the knowledge that they need to avoid falling for suspicious links or downloading malware and things like that. So what I've seen from my experience, especially in organizations, they do role-based training. So this is where the finance department will have like a specific type of security training that's a bit different from HR and IT, and and that takes form through workshops, PowerPoint slides, presentations, interactive quizzes, and things like that. And another form of training is also your fish-based methods. So that's when the IT security team of an organization will mimic the attack methods that attackers use. So they will send you like a fake phishing email just to see how susceptible the organization is to clicking that kind of thing. And then if you pass, they send you a message, well done. If you fail, then you get assigned training. So a lot of vendors out there, a lot of big companies are building services where that it's like a full package where you get what they call payloads, which is like the various phishing emails. You get assigned training. It's gamified to make it more engaging, so help humans with security. But those are some common methods on training users.
And the awareness that they need to know that this is not just a one-off thing. You don't join a company, do awareness once, and you're sorted for life.
100%.
Constant things are coming up. ChatGPT, that whole thing, that wasn't around 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It wasn't exist. Now, you have the ability to do a lot more with OpenAI, all these new integrations that are being created. So you have to always make sure that you're keeping up to date. You're aware of what happens around you, and you know how to avoid those certain aspects. And as you said, having someone close to you as a cybersecurity expert, you're able to go, okay, people will come to me when they need help or there's something wrong, and you want to foster that within a culture, in a company, within your friend group, within your family, within people that are close to you. And I think that is very important, even if you aren't a cybersecurity expert, you just know a little bit. And if you watch us and you're able to get that message out to your friends and family, let them know that we can help them and we can make sure that they are not making those common mistakes.
Exactly. I mean, awareness is not just limited to people who are in a company or awareness and training provided by a company. You yourself as an individual can take that step to, make yourself be aware of the latest trends and risks, or like maybe subscribing to security newsletters, YouTube, just watching something like this. This is a form of awareness and training, just you taking that step to keep up with the latest trends so that you understand the latest risks so that you can avoid them. So it's not just limited to an organization.
Exactly. And the most important part that we actually don't touch on a lot here is cyberbullying. At a young age, you're small, you at school, people could be creating accounts that could be imitating you as a person. They could be imitating your other personality that you actually are not that at all, but they're creating this personality online for you, but it's not you whatsoever. And you've got to be careful and how to avoid those and how to report those situations and who to go to, because some schools will not be held responsible for that because it's social media, it's online, it's not fostered within the school. So you've got to make sure that cyberbullying as well is you're aware of it and you know that it's important to protect your children, protect your and let your parents know that this is happening, and don't shy away from it. Be open about it, because in the short term it's like scary. I mean, you could be being bullied by someone and they're saying these small things, but you're like, I should just get over this.
Affects the kids' like growth, development. Basically, it's a parent's responsibility to make sure that their kids are cyber safe. You as a young adult, you as a person, you owe it to your money to protect it. You owe it to your money that's in the bank account to know how to keep it safe. So it's at the end of the day, it's taking personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And something I wanted to mention that you said, these AI systems that weren't around 2 years ago. That's 3 years ago. That's a brilliant point, because 10 years ago, phishing emails would say stuff like, I'm a Nigerian prince, got money tied up. If you help me, we can share the money. But the English was always bad. It was always easy to pick out like the grammar's off, because these attackers are not native English speaking. So
in the majority, yeah.
So back in the day, it was quite easy to catch them out because they weren't great English. But now you have AI, you have ChatGPT. You can ask it to write you like a convincing email to send to a CFO that's quite specific and knows exactly what are the words and things to kind of like trick the person it's going to with. So exactly that, we need to stay updated constantly all the time, because the attackers don't sleep and they don't slow down.
And I know, we've obviously we've been talking about the different ways in which we can go about avoiding these attacks. And just to sum it up, and I'll use an example of something that occurred, something close to maybe home to some of the viewers, came from a school email. And so I received an email from a lecturer who wasn't in fact a lecturer. And in this email, they mentioned that they wanted my student username, password to the student portal, my name, surname, basically my student details. And of course, for me as a cybersecurity professional, I was wondering, but why does a lecturer need this? You kind of already have access to all of these things, So the first thing that was a red flag to me, if I could say, was the domain that they use. Now, I go to UWC, and at UWC, the domain that we normally use, the domain that UWC is registered under is .ac.za, whereas this came from at gmail.com. So already that was like, okay, definitely not someone from UWC. I also searched the person's name in my emails to see if they actually exist. If it is maybe a different lecturer that I've never bumped into or something like that. Didn't exist. Again, another red flag. So that was the first thing. Always check the sender's details. Check the name, check the domain. The domain is always an important one. That will tell you right away if it is a scam or not. The second thing that I checked for was they used a generic greeting. So again, at UWC, firstly, a lecturer will never message me personally for absolutely no reason. So in the email, they mentioned that they wanted my details for maintenance purposes. Now, we have a maintenance team, and when there is maintenance, communication will be sent to everyone, not just me alone. I'm not the only one that's going to be affected by this maintenance, everyone will be. So, and they used Dear Student, and again, if this was really my lecturer, he would know my name, he or she would know my name and say, Dear Anita, Dear Warren, Dear Callum. But instead, they just said, Dear student, we need your details for maintenance purposes. There was an urgency to it as well. And that's the third red flag, is whenever there's a demand for an immediate action, that's most likely a phishing attempt, And again, because at UWC we have a maintenance team that will send communication 1 or 2 weeks before that maintenance actually happens, it just didn't make sense why they needed the details, right there and then for that specific reason. And the last thing that was a big red flag was there was a link. Why is maintenance team attaching a link? Why do I need to click on the link? And what I did was I hovered, over the link to see the real destination before actually clicking on it. And of course, it didn't lead to anything UWC related. It led to, it was a redirect to something very suspicious. And all of those reasons was why I actually reported it to, the IT team at UWC and said, look, this is a phishing attempt and it's not really one of, the lecturers as they're pretending to be. So those are the key things you want to look out for when you're receiving.
Verify.
Yeah, always verify. Never trust.
Zero
trust. Definitely. Even for phishing, if you're getting a call.
So on that, there's actually an app called Truecaller, which I mentioned earlier. And Truecaller, it's a brilliant app. And this is not sponsored at all. But
they should sponsor.
Exactly. What's amazing is that you get Truecaller on your phone, and you manually update a spam list that constantly is made sure to keep updated. However, that if you pay for it, and this is where they get you hooked, you then pay for it to be automatically updated to make sure. And recently, I've gotten a call like 6 or 7 times a day, and it's just someone playing music in my ear, and I'm a bit concerned to why this is happening, and it gets annoying. So to make sure that those kind of spam calls and the salespeople and all that, you get Truecaller, and they will block all of those kind of spam calls, suspected scams, all of that, and that's in international and local. It's amazing.
That is, I've used it a bit in the past. It is cool. I'm always like skeptical of those calls where they don't say anything, because I always think to myself, they're trying to capture like your voice.
Yeah, me too. I never say anything up until you say something, and if you don't say something, I'm gonna cut the call, because why are you calling me?
Exactly, trying to capture like your vocal cords and all that. It's crazy, but yeah, with AI these days, you can pretend to be someone you're not on video call. Like it's gotten it's gotten to that level, so it's crazy out there.
And if someone is impersonating your bank, as an example, asking for an OTP or sensitive information, don't ever share sensitive information over the phone, because any institution, I would like to believe that your friends and family as well should not be asking for sensitive information over the phone, and that again leads to verify, because you want to make sure that whoever you're speaking to is actually your bank, or is actually the school, is actually the lecturer. So always verify. Cannot stress that enough.
Yeah, it's being in cybersecurity and worrying about the people out there and social engineering. It's so important. And us as the human factor and the probably the most important part of cybersecurity, we need to make sure that everyone out there is able to understand it. So this is a very close to home subject for us, and it's creating that. You aren't just a hacker behind your computer in darkness hiding away. You are actually, you're out there, you have a face, you have a name, but you need to make sure that you are safe and secure.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the attackers are also humans. They understand how humans behave, and that's how they can go about exploiting that. And
that's what makes it so dangerous as the weakest link, because they can basically reverse engineer us by taking themselves. Like, what would I do in this situation? How,
Always remember, cybersecurity is not just about the technology. It's also about the people behind the technology. Like you say, we built the technology, so we understand how it works. And at the same time, that's dangerous because we can use that against other humans, for malicious intent. And the strongest systems are only as resilient as the humans behind it.
Security awareness is not just the cybersecurity people's responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility, because at the end of the day, we are all affected by the same systems that we all use. So we in this together.
So thank you for tuning in to episode 3, our very first episode of 2025. We hope that you are slightly more aware, with these sort of attacks, and that going forward you will be more careful, more mindful in the actions that you take, and just continue to protect yourself.
100%.
Stay secure, stay safe.
Cheers.